morning, everybody. So I'm Alessandro Linari. I lead the people analytics team in Vodafone UK. I've been in Vodafone for 3 years. And when I joined Vodafone, there was no people analytics. So I had quite an interesting and worth talking about journey. And today I will share some of what we've done in these 3 years with you. In particular, I want to talk you through about two specific phases. The first phase is building the team. So a few lessons I learned and a few hurdles I had to go through. And then I will fast forward 3 years and see where we are today and how we're organizing our work. So, when you join a new company and you are asked to build a new team, it's really a greenfield opportunity because you have the possibility and the chance, and really you need to take this chance to shape the team in the direction of travel yourself. Everything is good and green and the sun is shining. However, there are a few challenges. And so let me talk you through the three major challenges that I see in starting a new people analytics. And I know, especially I was in a panel earlier, I know a few of you have questions around these, and they went through some of these as well. So the first challenge I see is the infrastructure. Now, when you start up a team, you are part of a bigger company, of course, and there are pieces of infrastructures everywhere. However, the trouble you will, or your team will face is what do we go about it? How do we go about it? On one hand, you have HR systems that are usually mission critical. And so although they may have data, they cannot really be tinkered about by analysts. So that's not really a solution. And then you have other pieces of infrastructures around the company, which can be the BI team, it can be operational teams, it can be a big data platform. However, because of the confidentiality of the data and the sensitivity of the analysis, it's very unlikely that your team will be able to leverage, or at least in full, these infrastructures. So really the question that the team will have to ask themselves, how do we go about it? And when you think about what type of people you want in your startup team, you need to think about will they be able to manage and the infrastructure itself. The second challenge is around priorities. What is the team going to do in their first 12 months of existence? The way I see it is that people analytics have to face two major type of priorities. Business priorities that typically are around revenue and cost and customer experience, and priorities coming directly from HR. And interestingly, some of them are about definitely organizational effectiveness and making HR processes more efficient. Some of them are employee experiences, but sometimes, and I hear this all the time, lots of it is about getting better access to the data. Now, I think you need to find the right balance, because in my view, the problem with people analytics is that it's a new field. It's something that not many companies are doing, or they're not doing extensively. So you really need to be careful in choosing the priorities that give the highest value and give you the most visibility. In my view, if you have to choose, always go with business priorities and ignore the rest, because that's really where the real value is for the business. And if the business is valuing what you're doing, then everyone else will come along. Now, the third big challenge is around managing your stakeholders. So when you start, you have not proven any value. And as I said earlier, people analytics has not proven any value whatsoever. So, and you will face at least the two questions. The first question is, when are you going to deliver? I've given you the team and the team is built. What's going to happen? And this is related a little bit to the question about what is your team going to do in the next first 12 months. Now, the other problem that really is about stakeholder managers, that people analytics projects, in my experience, have a very long life cycle. Imagine this, and this is just an example of the first project I worked on when I joined Vodafone. It was around attrition in retail. So this was a very high priority because it was part of a wider transformation of a retail estate. So people were really wanted to understand who was leaving, why people were leaving, and trying to reduce that. So I joined this, I started the project. If you think of the timeline, it's massive. you start a new project. It's attrition. Attrition, by the way, is quite simple to understand by everybody, but other projects can be more complex. So you spend a couple of weeks, 4 weeks sometimes, just to understand the problem, understand who the stakeholders are, understand how to approach it, what the deliverables should be, maybe building a business case. And then you spend another variable amount of time, 2 to 3 months, to do the analytics. That includes preparing acquiring the data, sometimes even talking to privacy about it, then acquiring the data, preparing it, normalizing it, pulling it all together, and then extracting the insights. And I'm saying 2 months is really conservative here. Let's say 2 to 3 months. Once you have the insights, what are you going to do about it? Usually, you need to start presenting, and your team will start presenting the insights to the stakeholders. Stakeholders are HR and the business. That means organizing meetings, talking to people, and explaining them what is happening with your workforce. And remember, sometimes it may mean convincing them that using a data-driven approach in addressing that business problem is a meaningful way forward. Now, I call this phase action plan because really, as an analyst, you are not the expert, so you can give recommendations, but those recommendations are useless to the business unless they are translated in a set list of actions that then will lead into actual HR and business interventions. Now, the problem with a people analytics project is that the type of interventions that are derived from a project are usually heavy from an organizational and budgeting perspective. If you're going to recommend a change in the reward structure, if you're going to recommend a pay rise or updating shift patterns, which is usually what you see in environments such as call centers and retails, or anything you do will often have implications from a budgeting perspective because you need to account for more money, and from a policies that perspective that will need updating, employee relations, HRBPs need to be briefed. If you want to change something in the resourcing team, then you need to brief all resources. In other words, implementing an HR policy, a change in an HR policy takes time. And in my experience with this example in particular, it took between 3 and 4 months, something like that, because we did change a few things. Now, let's stop for a second. 8 months in, and all we've done has been a bit of analysis and a bit of preparation. So if you go back to the original question, when is your project going to deliver? In my experience, when you're setting up a people analytics team, you are not going to see any material change in any of the KPIs that you set at the beginning before 8 to 9 months, sometimes longer than that. To this, you need to appreciate that we're talking about a workforce. So there are people, there are behaviors, there is a huge inertia, especially if the workforce is large. So in reality, in the case of attrition, what we found was that we made changes to the reward, we made changes to the messaging, we made lots of changes, but people took some time to accept the changes and change their behaviors. In other words, if you have decided to leave and someone gives you a pay rise, you're still leaving. So it's not you that I'm targeting, it's the next cohort of people. That adds more delay in seeing the effects. Is this good, bad news? It's not. All I'm saying is stakeholder management, and that's why, by the way, I'm spending lots of time on this specific point. Stakeholder management, in my view, is probably the largest problem with people analytics when you're starting up the team, because you need to explain to people that they need to wait. Now, the second problem that you will have with stakeholders is that as soon as you see some effects on the workforce, so to speak, your attrition starts falling, you will be asked, what was your contribution? And I had lots of discussions internally, and they're very good discussions because they will help you understand why you're doing there, why your team is there, why you exist in a way in the bigger picture of the organization. Now, these questions will also come up if you've chosen your priorities correctly. So I said earlier, retail had a big focus when I joined. What that means is that I was not the only person or interested in this, but lots of people were involved into trying to transform retail. But what that means is that it was not just my attrition analysis that was happening in that space, but there were lots of other initiatives. For example, we had just launched a franchise program, so our entire state was transforming. We introduced a new concept of stores. What that meant is that employees in those stores started having a different perception of their working environment, their relationship with customers, and a bit later, to be honest, that was around July, August 2019, we launched new very exciting products, unlimited data and 5G. So you can imagine that all these three elements had an impact on what people think, how people perceive, how employees perceive the organization. So going back to the original question, when we saw attrition falling, and for your information, it kept falling steadily for quite a long time, which so the whole program was very successful. The question that came to me is, but would attrition have fallen even if your team were not part of it? And so, just so you know, this is a question that it's a good question, that it helps you focus on what's important, but it's a question that you will face and that you will need to manage. And you will need, like it or not, to be able to explain what you are delivering, when you are delivering, and what is the impact of your actions on the workforce. Now, I just want to wrap up before going to the next section, which is quite interesting as well, in my opinion. So if I had to give a few takeaways on what is the starter's kit for a new people analytics team, I would say the first thing that you cannot do without is technical skills. So an analytics is essentially an analyst. The problem with, if you like, what I like to call traditional data science, and I know it might sound like a bit derogatory, but that's not the point. The point is that in a traditional data science environment, you have extremely skilled people that are extremely good at very advanced analytics, and they can spend all days and weeks in developing very complicated algorithms. I don't believe that's necessarily needed in a in a people analytics environment. However, what you need is people that are sufficiently skilled in your in technical disciplines, but they also have the right business acumen, the right business skills to be able to play a role that is in between analytics and the business, and by the way, HR. So to wrap up, you do need some technical skills to get going and to work on your analytics. You need business skills to help you identifying what the priorities are and focus on what really matters. You do need, and this is essential, you need a mandate for senior leaders. Now, the problem with people analytics is, as I said before, this is a new discipline. Many organizations are not used to it. And in my experience, there is a point where you need a push from above to a sort of make people work, potentially think in a different way. If you think about a typical, traditional, hopefully it's now from the past, the environment of HR, where HR is not used to think analytically, is not used to use insights, analytics is a big disruption. So it's so some people will need help, we need push, etc. Finally, stakeholder management. I spent quite a few minutes there, so I'm going to move over. Now, if we fast forward 3 years, I can say that the way I worked and the way I grew the team has been what I said earlier. Infrastructure, it was important, but we did as much as needed. And priorities, we always focused on business priorities and tried to align to what matters. We've been a bit ruthless in saying this is what matters, this is what adds value, everything else we ignore for now. There is a point, however, where the team has grown, and this is where we are today, and starts having a wider scope. And you need to do a bit of a step back and think about what is the scope, what should your team do. Now, this is how I see a typical people analytics team should be structured. This is how I structured it. If you look at priorities of people analytics teams, I think there are 3 major areas, and they're really driven by the type of KPIs that we want to go after. I think the first type of projects are projects that have a commercial focus, where the KPIs are aligned to some business KPIs, so typical revenue, for cost and customer experience. And so what you typically do there is that you take the business KPIs and then derive other people analytics related KPIs that are coming from there. For example, productivity analysis, how do you drive performance of your employees? Or attrition analysis, that was another case, because one of the things we were looking at with attrition analysis was cost of the attrition, but also impact on customer experience, because clearly if your people if your employees leave too frequently, then the experience in store is affected. Then the second type of projects that that you will find is what I call project in the organizational effectiveness area. So the typical KPIs are around cost and some measure of efficiency of HR. I classify workforce planning, for example, in this bucket, because when you want to plan for your current future skills and capabilities, etc., that's really organizational effectiveness. And I also classify HR dashboards here, because really, why do you want an analytics team to provide dashboards? That's because you want your HR business partners to work more efficiently, to focus on what matters to them and to the business, what they're good at, which is the non-technical side, I think. And finally, there is another bucket, which is around the people and talent, where your KPIs are usually related to the experience of employees, employee value proposition, and typical projects are found in the recruiting space. So how to improve candidate experience, how to measure that, how to ensure quality of hire, and also in the employee experience in general. I also label D&I, because that's also part of employee experience. Now, the fourth bucket that I always keep in any slide I have, even when I'm asked to remove it, is the infrastructure bit, because I always like to remember to my stakeholders that what really matters to the business, what really matters to them, is the KPIs that you see in the top right in this area here of the slide. But none of this is possible without the right infrastructure. So from my experience, your infrastructure will evolve and will mature with the maturity of your team. To be honest with you, you can start, and the way I started was producing dashboards in PDF. That didn't matter. What mattered there were the insights. Clearly, as the team improved, then the PDFs had to become dashboards. I started building databases. I started thinking about a data lake for our own team. What tools are we using? What platform? And also, how can we automate all the little things and tasks that we have, so we don't waste our time doing manual tasks. Now, what I'm going to do is to give you a few examples, one for each area, of practical projects that my team have worked on in the last 2 to 3 years. I gave you an idea of attrition analysis, so I'll do something else now. And so an example of a project that has a very high commercial focus is productivity analysis. In this case, team performance in retail. And by the way, this project was motivated out of the good results of the attrition analysis. In this project, the business problem was to identify the best teams in retails. And then the reason for that, we wanted to create a program of continuous improvement across the state. So just to reword this in a more analytically friendly way, we focused on identifying who our top teams are, and this information would then feed into, from an existing workforce point of view, retaining the best teams, and also answer the question, how can I improve all other teams that are not currently the best? And then in terms of future workforce, this information will feed into how do we hire the best people. So what my team has done, we have developed a methodology that helped us identify who the best and worst I say here store managers, but it's really interchangeable with store manager, team managers, because in a retail environment, store managers are really what drive the success of the team. So we first identified a methodology that uses business data and HR data to identify what we think was the top. And then we built a number of tools and dashboards to help the conversation and visualize the data that you see here on the top right. In terms of outcomes, and you can see here, you have KPIs here on the left, and here you have red and green lines which identify performance of specific stores, specific teams over the years. And so you see that you can see the evolution. Now, this sort of analysis was very useful because we started using it for improving our performance management process. The feedback I received is that it helped discussions because, and also taking actions on the back of the data, because all the emotional part of the performance management process was taken out. The emotional part of the discussion was taken out of the process because it was based on objective insights and data. It also increased trust in HR capabilities, which was really very interesting because we had a business that started looking at what we were producing as an HR team and started thinking that actually we were quite a relevant partner to the conversation. And we also then we're using these in other projects. Now, the only problem with this, if you like, is that because of the pandemic, we had to close all our stores for an extensive period of time. So some of these, most of these, in fact, had to be put on hold because our stores were closed and then they opened and then closed again. So, but it's an interesting experience that we're planning to move forward. Now, second project, now this is in the organizational effectiveness areas. This is what we've done in the workforce planning space. This is part of a wider project in the whole of Vodafone Group. So this is more at the proof of concept level, but we started building a skills taxonomy for every single employee in Vodafone UK. We have developed tools, analytic tools, to create a taxonomy automatically based on job descriptions. And then we have built a few tools to navigate the data. So in this case here on the left, it's just, actually, I don't know if you can see, but I'll just talk you through. But these are tools to explore the possibility of suggesting potential career moves. So if you have a role in your company and you can describe that role with a certain number of skills, what you can do is do some comparative analysis with all other roles in the company and then recommend the next career move to employees. And that can help with planning. And also we use these skills data to compare different parts of the organization. And what you see here on the right, I don't think you can see this now, that I'm sorry about it. We looked at where job roles are positioned in terms of prevalence of hard skills versus soft skills. And now the reason why we've done this sort of work is because we are moving as Vodafone as globally into the workforce planning space. We realize it's a very difficult space to be in. Lots of uncertainty, so we needed to run a few pilots, a few proof of concepts, and this is one of them. In the back of this, we now have a platform that we are using to do smaller skills-driven activities, such as skills assessments. It's now in progress, and we also look at how to model future skills for parts of our workforce. I just came through this because I would like to move into the questions. The other, just very quickly, the other project, an example in the people and talent space is we have a public target as Vodafone to reach 45% senior female representation by 2030. The problem you have with these sort of targets is that sometimes they come from above and it's unclear to business and senior leaders how they're going to get there. So what we did, we developed a number of tools and also some predictive modeling to try and break these targets down. So you have 45% in 2030. What does it mean going backwards in time, 2025, 2022, etc., and so on and so forth? And so we also developed, so these are examples of tools, and this is something that helps you predict if you have this gender split today, and if you observe these trends in hiring, promotions, and leavers in the last 12 months. Where do you predict we will be in 12 months' time? What do we need to to change in the way we do recruiting, in the way we do promotion, and so on and so forth, to facilitate and accelerate the transformation. So this sort of information then can be broken down into an action plan. This is what I was saying earlier. So if I'm saying that the current promotion rate is not strong enough, and I want to change that, I want to go for, this is a made-up example, from 40% women to 45% women. What does that mean? How many people how many women do I need to hire? How does this break it down in every function? Technology will have challenges that are different from finance, from call center, and so on and so forth. This is being used now to set targets across the company. This is very useful because, again, it's showing our business stakeholders that if we use data, we can give them more support, and it's also definitely improving the profile of the HR team as a whole. So now, concluding the presentation, I just presented you two different views of our journey in Vodafone, yesterday, if you like, and today. If I had to just summarize this in 2 words, I would say that yesterday, as an early stage people analytics team, the real focus has been on delivery, on proving value, and almost in a way being ruthless. Focus on what matters, ignore completely the rest. This is essential because if you disperse your limited resources, you are going to be not relevant. And in particular, no dashboards, no reporting. In our case, I was very lucky. There was another team, so I wasn't even asked. The few times I had been asked to do some reporting, I said no, because there's not enough value for me to work on that. If now we shift to today, clearly there's a point where this needs to change, and now we had to do a step back and think more strategically, understand what the vision for the team is, being able to build it more widely, and in a way being more experimental. So the project the example I gave you with workforce planning is something that I can do today because we have proven value, we have more scope, longer horizon, but we definitely could not do at the beginning because it was a very risky project. So I'm going to look at some of the questions now, and let me stop the screen share. Yeah. How skills on people? Should it in performance? Sorry, guys, I need to just read some of these. Discuss how much of your time you spend discussing, and how much alone with the numbers. Oh, this is from Marcel. Thanks a lot. I'll try to go through all of them. This is a very interesting question. I would be controversial and say 50% of the time, well, maybe less than that, 40% of the time on technical work and 60% of the time presenting and managing stakeholders. Now, I know this is not true across the whole team. So now we are a bigger team. So the time I personally spend crunching numbers is very little, but people in my team are spending most of their time there. But definitely there is a big element of managing stakeholders. Now, this is something I never experienced before getting to people analytics. I spent years and years working with data and other analytics projects. Most of my time was spent working with data, not just because career was a more junior role, but also because it was different nature. In terms of who initiated the team performance project, and this is interesting because it links nicely, and who was the main owner. So the team performance project was initiated by HR in conjunction with the business. So one of the strapline I showed you earlier, which was we want to create the best team, was something that was agreed. It was literally an HR/business project. Then I got involved as part of it, as part of the conversations that I'm having, that I'm not, and the time I don't spend on technical work, because the HR team that had seen the results. So the results that we had delivered with the attrition analytics then engaged me and saying, is there any chance you're able to help with this project as well? And so that's how the conversation started. But again, it's sort of like, just I don't know if there is a question, but if you have to think about what does your pipeline look like? Who decides the pipeline? I have to say that when I started, there was no pipeline. I had a senior leader, I had the HR director at the time that said, this is the business priority. attrition, retail, etc. Let's focus on this. Because the people really didn't know what to ask. They didn't know what it was valuable or not. After that was delivered, then people started asking questions, and clearly I started reaching out to a various stakeholders and asking, what can I help you with? And that's how the team performance project came about. Where I am now, it's I don't reach out to anyone, try to hide away, because I have too big pipeline. In fact, we're even hiring. We're about to hire for new people because we can't cover all requests. Do you work on workforce forecasting? And if so, who are the key data players? Josephine, thanks. Not so much for now, although we need to do that. I think it depends what you mean with forecasting workforce. If you mean budgeting and planning, I don't. Although we will have to. It's an area that I don't have. It's one of the many things in the pipeline. If you're talking about skills and capabilities, it's something we are trialing it. I wouldn't say we are very strong in that. As in, we are in the proof of concept phase, and that's a very risky project because skills are so complicated. And how do you collect skills on people? In fact, self-reporting. Yeah, that's so. No, we are not there yet. What we first try to create a baseline with the skills taxonomy. With the skills taxonomy, and now we are going to that. Now, guys, I need to close this broadcast. I'm sorry because we are a bit over time. So I thank you very much for your questions. I hope you enjoyed this session and reach out if you have any more questions. Thank you.